and solve it. We want the judge to read the bill and say, okay, tenant, you had to notify the landlord, and that's already solved in 1817 something, I don't remember the statute number. Robert found that one for us. And then the landlord has so much time to get at least remedial repairs in place. There was a provision we put in the case of tornadoes. Okay, you know, we had a tornado in Little Rock in 2008. 51 roofing companies, 49 of them smoked meth. You waited for the two good ones. But you put a blue tarp on in the meantime. We tried to take all that detail. I started from Sue Madison's bill. I really did. Because it had the simplest talk about what is needed to live safely. And that's what we built from.
Sue Madison mentioned Greg meetings ago. Greg, would you like to speak to that at all?
Should be the process, or?
I'm curious if you like it.
The wounds have healed, the bruises. No, we got started very early on, knowing that we couldn't just show up in January. And certainly Lynn and Howard and several others, Amy Johnson, put in a lot more work than I ever did. We knew we needed to get an early start. We had a bill coming into session that we thought had a decent chance. The only thing that really stood in our way were the realtors. We gave the bill to them second week of session because they wanted a chance to provide some input, and we wanted to work with them to the extent that we could. What I had suspected might happen, though, is that they would take quite a bit of time getting their changes back to us. I was told it should hopefully only take about a week. The following week it was, well, we just need about another week. That went on for about a month and a half or so before we finally had some changes from them. We sat down to do them. We actually ended up incorporating, about 80% of the changes?
Yes, that's correct. We did incorporate the 20% that would have gutted the bill.
Basically, sort of a little poison pill. Exactly the changes that they gave us, which we thought was pretty reasonable, but they did not think so. And so not only did they just decide to not oppose this, but they decided that they would still actively oppose, even though we incorporated 80% of their changes. And we got assigned to the House Insurance and Commerce Committee. That was a committee that was divided 10-10, one of the few committees on which Democrats had any kind of numbers. Coincidentally, because of a small quirk, I won't get into too much detail, because the Speaker also served on that committee. It's a committee where you actually only needed 10 members to get a bill passed. So that gave me a flicker of hope of actually being able to get the bill on the House floor. Even though it's not really a partisan issue, it does tend to break that way. Yeah, we walked into an ambush. We knew it was going to be a tough fight. I expected the vote to be a little bit closer, but at the end of the day, we only got 3 votes, and one of those was mine, because I'm on that committee. So,
I'm glad you voted for it. That would have been embarrassing.
Part of it was attendance. This was late in session, so we were missing probably about a half dozen committee members who might have been able to pick up a couple more votes. Certainly nothing close to what we would have needed to get it on the floor. And, I have friends who are realtors, but the realtors are the enemy of this particular issue.
Yes.
I'm actually a little confused by that, and I don't know if Greg or y'all want to answer that, but okay, so the landlords are the ones who own the property and are affected by this and deal day to day with the tenant. And realtors are people who help negotiate sales of property between two people. So why are they?
A number of them also.
Oh, because they also.
Because in Arkansas, to manage another person's property, you must be a real estate broker. Not just an agent, you must be a broker level person.
Oh, so they're managed.
So the landlord association, we're mom and pop, we can manage our own properties because we own them directly. But let's say you were moving out of state and you wanted me to run your property for you, I can't do it because I'm not a real estate broker.
Oh, so that's why they have a big stake in it. Okay.
They have a huge stake in it.
Yes.
Can a landlord refuse to rent a house?
As long as that reason for refusal is not a violation of fair housing.
I'm just wondering why landlords, I work with some charity organizations, and sometimes I wonder why the landlord ever rented that place to that person. Because it was obvious that they had no viable source of income.
There's one thing that my organization organization does is we do a thing called Landlord 101. We have 13 chapters around the state. We don't have one in Northwest Arkansas. We've looked at forming one multiple times, but we do Landlord 101s where we try to teach landlords how to be better at what they do, how to follow the law, how to take care of their places, and how to screen, how to verify. It's a hard thing to say. 90% of tenants are good people, 90% of landlords are good people. It's the 10% that make it bad for everybody, 10% on both sides. And, you know, I've had good tenants come to me. They do well in their interview. Their credit and background checks are fine. I rent to them steadily for years. And I have another person come to me, and I feel just as good about that personal meeting that I run their credit, and I find out they're wanted on 25 bench warrants, and that person has a really good skill, a good personality, and charisma, and can lie their way into a situation. And then you've got some landlords who don't care. I mean, I can see after 30 years you can become cynical. You can become depressed after seeing else's trash. It's like any profession, they're good and they're bad. Sometimes they make their own problems. Yes.
I used to live in Madison, Wisconsin, which has a student population about 3 or 4 times what Fayetteville has, and you know, it certainly had its problems with you know, with essentially student slum housing. And one of the things that a group called the Tenant Resource Center did, and Wisconsin has much stronger tenant laws than Arkansas, obviously. Obviously, everyone has much stronger laws than Arkansas does, but they would publish essentially an ad in a local weekly paper that was, and they ran a competition for the worst housing in the city. And so there was an aspect of this that was public shaming for really poorly managed rental properties. And one of the things that this, you know, it was funny, and but it also served to warn kind of the most vulnerable populations in Madison about the worst property owners in Madison. And those tended to be international students who were just really in a pickle with even just signing leases in which the terms of the lease were just totally absurd. And so I guess one of the things that I would pose not just to our speakers but to the league and to us as community members are what are some of the things that we could do that are not waiting for this, obviously these unjust laws to be declared unconstitutional again and again, and to wait for the 2017 legislative session. But what are some of the things that we can do as a community to address some of these issues on the tenant side? For sure, I think we're starting to really see some abuses, particularly in student housing now that our student population is growing.
We have a representative from off-campus communities at the University of Arkansas, Samantha here, and that's her expertise. So have we started anything?
No, and it's hard coming from the standpoint of the university to say, you know, to endorse or not endorse certain properties through that route. We've tried to be a little more intentional, especially with that international student group, because they don't know. I mean, everything from trying to direct them to the right places to doing webinars so they come here where they can ask questions. With them, they face a lot of problems with bed bugs as well, because they'll take a couch, mattress, whatever they find in the dumpster, and it's in the dumpster for a reason. So we work really closely with their office to try to educate them from their standpoint, but it's really hard. And I mean, I know one management company in this town that is terrible to international students, and she will threaten to get them deported, and that's not the thing. But she'll make these terrible empty threats to them, and they'll call them, you know, crying because they think this woman is going to send them home. So it's really, and you know, it's like we have some really good landlords here, and we have a few that are terrible. I mean, I had a student that I dealt with last semester from a small property management company here. Something was off with his hot water heater, and he called the landlord, and it was he had gas, you know, he had gas for heat, and the landlord, you know, didn't really do anything about it. So he called Source Gas to come out, and Source Gas came out and was like, you cannot be in this apartment. The CO2, the gas is leaking, you cannot be in here. And so we told the landlord, and you know, the landlord sent someone 2 weeks later, and it was, you know, we tried to call the city, and the city said, well, we don't have laws about that, so you have to hire a private inspector and then pay for the inspector to come out, and then the kid's like, I have, $200 in my name, like, I can't be hiring a private inspector. So, yeah, there are landlords here that we try to take advantage of students. It's usually the smaller companies, like with the safety issues, international students. We've had a really large increase in the state management companies that come from out of state, which is good and bad. Good because, they have certain regulations and they have this huge operation, so they have money, for repairs and stuff like that. Bad because they don't really care about individual students, so they're just reporting to the regional, reporting to corporate, and they don't care what's happening in the student's life. So it's really interesting, and it's hard when you have these conversations with students and pretty much tell them there's nothing you can do, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing legal aid can do. I work with Marshall putting on the law, I put a lot of students in legal aid, visa and corrections, but for the most part, and it sucks when you have to tell students, like, you don't have a right to do this, you don't have a right to have a home freedom to eat gas, talk to it's hard. Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, the idea that the floated here about Daniel looking at an ordinance is actually a pretty good idea.
If you do,
The legislature won't meet for a while.
if you do that, my recommendation, if you do that, ask the big property managers to comment and to come help you draft it. Well, if you get into us versus them, look at the firepower gap. Look at the election you had on a civil rights ordinance last fall.
Surely we wouldn't battle with churches on this one.
I don't know.
Well, do you think the cities have that far? Do you think the cities in Arkansas have the authority to do something like that?
Well, that's a good question. We're a Dillon's rule state. There's very, very limited home rule power here. So whereas, in theory, if local governments have the power to enact something like this, they can. And local government law is not my area. So, but I'm sure there's somebody at the law school here who can answer that question for you. And then if it's not within a locality's power, then you're looking at a statute to give localities the power to do that. So, so that's a good question, whether it is within the Dillon's rule power of local governments here in Arkansas. And personally, I don't know the answer to that question. That's an excellent question.